Too many Florence Nightingales, not enough Robin Hoods. Too many halos, not enough heroes coming up with the goods. So you thought you'd like to change the world, decided to stage a jumble sale for the poor, for the poor. So you thought you'd like to change the world, decided to stage a jumble sale for the poor, for the poor. It's a waste of time if you know what they mean. Try shaking your box in front of the queen, 'cause her purse is fat and bursting at the seams. It's a waste of time if you know what they mean. Not enough hands on heart. Too many ready to call it a day before the day starts. So you thought you'd like to see them healed. Got Blue Pete at the stage and appeal for the poor, for the poor. So you thought you'd like to see them healed. Got Blue Pete at the stage and appeal for the poor, for the poor. It's a waste of time if you know what they mean. Try shaking your box in front of the queen, 'cause her purse is fat and bursting at the seams. It's a waste of time if you know what they mean. A waste of time if you know what they mean. Try shaking your box in front of the queen, 'cause her purse is fat and bursting at the seams. It's a waste of time if you know what they mean.
And good evening and welcome to Raconteurs News on this Tuesday evening. It's the 15th of March 2022 and it's still the crazy world that we live in. And we're still here, though. We're still here. First things first, let's say hello, a big happy birthday to Taylor, who's celebrating his birthday today. I don't know how old he is. We'll get him on and see how old he is. Taylor, how are you doing, mate?
Doing all right. I'm nice to be on. I am 28 today.
28 years old. Look at that. Absolutely fantastic. And never been kissed. So we need to sort that out, don't we? At some point. All right, Uni, I've because it's his birthday, and I think it's a bit of a trial out. I'm going to get Uni today to read out he's going to keep an eye on the chat room and make a note of anything that's. I give him instructions, but he's not been able to follow them in an email. So he's just in it like this. So he's going to make notes of stuff, and then he's going to be coming in and telling everybody, just telling us what's been going on in the chat room. Any questions or all like that. So good evening, Taylor, and happy birthday to you, mate. But let's get to our guest tonight. Good evening, Ben Emlyn Jones. How you doing, my old friend?
Hello, Jason. Hello, Taylor. Happy birthday, Taylor. And thank you for having me back on the show. It's great to talk to you again. I'm not bad, thank you. Not bad. Well, all the crazy stuff going on in the world right now is a bit nerve-wracking and worrying, but I'm trying to put a brave face on it, you know.
Yeah, I think we're all trying to do that, aren't we? I've probably got a completely different perspective, but it's always good to get other people's perspectives as well. So, as a first question for you, I just wanted to know, how's the last couple of years been for you with the COVID? Because I looked, and I think it were April 2020 last time we spoke.
Yeah, I think that was was I not on last year? Maybe.
You might have been, actually. Yeah,
yeah,
I think so.
but it's I luckily managed to keep working on a personal level. I didn't fare too badly because I managed to keep working through the pandemic. I'm self-employed. I still had work jobs to do, so that wasn't an issue for me. However, like everyone else, I found it very, very worrying, very stressful. I was concerned for family members, but also for the world in general. The way that the government had basically, they found some way to sort of rush the new world order in like a couple of years, and I thought, my goodness me, they were locking people in their homes. They were forcing people. Some people were being forced to go on databases. You were being forced to have medication, whether you liked it or not. Well, they were putting enormous pressure on you to have medication, and things like this. And I thought, my goodness me, they're doing so many horrible things, and it's supposedly all for the benefit of our health. So it was a stressful couple of years, I think. And then you get this amazing emergency stop stitch situation where it just seems almost overnight to vanish into nothing, and it's replaced by these terrible things going on in Eastern Europe right now. So it seems like we've lurched from one crisis to another. It's Oceania is now at war with East Asia, and Eurasia are our allies. That's all well said.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, I did predict on, I think, January the 4th on this show. I said by April it will look. You won't even remember it. It'll be gone. Maybe it'll be a few numbers that go across bottom of the screen on news channels, but apart from that, it'll be gone. So I've made that prediction, and it's come true. I just didn't think that. I thought it might give us a bit of time off, to be fair, but. I don't think fairness is really in their agenda.
They also seem to be in a hurry for some reason. They've never shown this much haste before, as if they know something that's going on that we don't. I get that feeling that this drive to create a tyrannical world government, which has been going on since time immemorial, has had a pace which is reasonably slow. They seem to have had a lot of patience. It's almost as if almost overnight their patience ran out, and they said, right, let's just get this done in one go. And I wonder why it is they're rushing all of a sudden. Is it now? Are they suddenly finding they have a time limit? If so, that's good news for us. But on the subject of giving us time off, again, this new acceleration means we don't get any time off. We go from one crisis to the next. Have you noticed that there always has to be some kind of crisis going on, no matter what it is? They just can't leave us in peace. And if there's no real crisis, they just make one up. But it's almost as if they're bad, very, very bad journalists who have they have a regular column in a newspaper, and somehow they have to keep their readers entertained. And so their challenge is to come up with a believable scenario every so often, and then use it, and then discard it, and bring in another one. So there's going to be no respite. I don't know how this situation in Ukraine is going to go, but hopefully it'll end well. But there'll be another one waiting in the wings, another crisis.
Yeah, well, as there always is. I mean, I'm sure they've got plenty of stuff up the sleeve. Let me just say hello to the people in the chat room. Good evening to Welsh Dave, who's in there, Lion Share, Jerry, son of Mick Galaxian. The caddies are here as well, Donna and Matt. And who the guy that said that about you? What was his name? When you said at the beginning, the first guy who asked about your rumpled foreskin. That's it. Tony as well. Uni, who's with us. Dinny, good evening to you. Tom Aspinall, hello to you. Anybody who's over here, welcome to Raconteurs News. Who's not been before, who's here to listen to Ben. Good evening. Welcome to Raconteurs News. You can like and subscribe if you like. This is a place where I'm happy with this, where we are, and I'm not looking for masses of people. I don't really want to draw attention to us, especially with some of the subjects that we cover. And we seem to be getting away with it so far. So all good stuff. So enjoy yourselves in the chat room. Just remember the bouncers are in there as well. They're going to be watching you. And that includes Uni, who's also here he's going to keep an eye on the chat room.
I'm keeping an eye right now.
So that again, sorry, Taylor.
Oh, I'm just saying that. Yeah, I'm keeping an eye. I'm keeping an eye out.
Excellent, excellent, good man, and happy. Did you get anything for your birthday, by the way?
Oh no, well, no, but like everyone else, we're a pretty poor family, so I don't expect anything, like that. Plus, I'm 28 years old. I'm not 10 years old anymore.
This is true. This is true. Yeah, no more than 500 views a week, please. Yeah, that's exactly what we want. Cheers. Thanks, Curious Partridge. Right, let's get back to Ben. Ben, well, I mean, where do we start? Particularly, you used to work, as everyone knows, everyone who knows you used to be a hospital porter. That's where your moniker HPANWO comes from. Hospital Porters Against the New World Order. Do you still know people in the NHS, and what was their reaction, the people that you know in the NHS, to what was going on the last couple of years before World War III reared its ugly head?
No, I've kept in touch with people on the inside. My brother porters are still very close to me, and the NHS actually it was a really strange situation because the hospitals were supposedly overwhelmed. There was continuous news stories about the fear of overwhelming the NHS. All the lockdowns, all the restrictions were justified that way. They said we mustn't overwhelm the NHS, so we have to restrict the spread of the infection by shutting down the economy, shutting down small businesses. You get your 1 hour a day's exercise and that's it. Stay home, save lives, that kind of thing. They really did.
TikTok continue to dance on their videos. Remember that?
They did, yeah. Well, you see, the reason they did that was because they were pretty bored. I mean, the hospital did clear the decks for action, and they set up an entire quarantined area of the hospital with infection control and exits and entries. So you have to wash yourself and change your clothes when you go in and out. You have to wear the personal protective equipment, that kind of thing. So it was all cleared. We were all set for a major pandemic. I used to do this. I've never for real, but I did it as a drill several times over the course of my career in the NHS. But as a result of this, they were also changing the policies in terms of the admissions. So, for example, if you turned up at A&E, the emergency unit, and you very often be sent home rather than admitted when you would otherwise be admitted. If you were referred from a GP, you'd be sent home rather than admitted. So there's much more care in the community rather than admission. GP referrals, clinical referrals, people like that. They would otherwise have been admitted and treated as an inpatients. Instead, they were sent home so the hospital wouldn't be overwhelmed, because we were preparing ourselves, not me personally, but we as a portering service, were preparing themselves for this massive onslaught of COVID cases, but it never came. As a result, the hospital, it was actually very, very quiet in the hospital for a number of months, that's where the dancing came from. They did that to pass the time. I believe this whole idea of it might overwhelm the NHS was just an excuse. After 23 years in the National Health Service, I know very well that the NHS is very adaptable. I know that it has the capability of dealing with the pandemic we were faced with, and much worse. I mean, it used to drill for things like nuclear bombardment and things like that. I mean, it's perfectly capable of adapting to any situation that's thrown at it that's conceivable. The planners in government, they thought of all kinds of horrible scenarios, probably the alien invasion or something like that. And they said, how's the NHS going to deal with this? And they would train staff, drills, things like that to cope with it. So I believe don't overwhelm the NHS was just an excuse to bring in I've got to be careful what I say on YouTube here, but this agenda for forced medication and the creation of a database and the hyper-regulation of the economy, all the things that are necessary for a totalitarian world government. And we've seen in places like Canada that this emergency stop message hasn't got through to everyone yet. You may have noticed that in Canada, they're behaving as if nothing's happened. Hence the trucker protests, if you remember that. So,
yeah. Yeah. It does seem that the world's not keeping up. I mean, we were pretty much, like you say, it's pretty much gone. There's still remnants about. People, I've been to take Adi swimming today and take him shopping as well. And going around Aldi, there's still people with masks on, and still people coming in and wiping the trolleys down and doing all this sort of stuff, and with masks on and everything. It really has worked on some people to the point where they're so afraid that the government's lying to them, that it's not really gone away, that they're still wearing masks, even though
It's remarkable. They think the government can lie to them that it's gone away, but they can't. They don't. They believe the government, and the government say it's here in the first place, and it's the clear and pleasant danger for which we have to destroy democracy and live under a fascist jackboot. So yeah, it's frustrating to see people going along with it. It's as if the mass formation psychosis that Dr. Malone was talking about is still applying. Now, what's strange about the message hasn't got through to everyone around the world is because this is some kind of emergency stop, it hasn't been coordinated very well, which is why I think there are some countries still holding out as if they haven't had the call from head office yet. Trudeau in Canada seems to be one of these people. It's very rare for the deep state, Illuminati, whatever you want to call them. It's very rare for them to be so disorganized and in such disarray. They are normally masters at this game, so they appear to be in trouble. It looks like they are as bad and worrying as all this is. It appears there's some kind of spanner in the works. So I don't know what it is, but it's probably good news for us. We'll probably find out sooner or later.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. On that point, I mean, whatever the reason for all the TikTok videos and the dancing and the stuff like that, I mean, it's a pretty bad idea, isn't it? I mean, when people are being kept away from their own families and they're not allowed to we're told the NHS is overrun, and then they're doing they're doing these dances. So I don't know whether, like you say, it may have been to do with boredom. But I had some experience. I went to a cardiologist appointment during pandemic, and the good thing about that was there was nobody there, so I was straight in. There was nobody waiting. There was nobody queuing up, so they were getting people in on time, which did work. But then also, I got admitted in July last year. Now my GP had done a blood test on me, and the next day had rung me up and said, "I've sent an ambulance for you because you need to go to hospital. You need to be admitted." And so eventually I went there. I cancelled the ambulance. Obviously, I got my wife to take me, but it was so important for me to be going into hospital. But yet when I got there, I spent the entire night on one of these wards that is like a catchment ward, like a triage ward.
Yeah.
And then I moved into a wing that had been closed for 4 years, that suddenly reopened.
Yeah, I mean they did a good job, I think, considering what they were called to do. They did a very, very good job, and they did, in terms of preparation, you can't fault them. They actually did. They actually did what they were supposed to do, what they've been trained to do. As it happens, though, I don't think they realised. I mean, some of them still don't realise that it was some kind of confidence trick that the government was playing. This has been played on all of us. They can't come along. They can't just walk up to us and say, we want to create a database. We want to create a situation of forced medication. We want to undo all these laws relating to informed consent for medication and for free travel, for the ability to do this, that, and the other, which, these essential civil rights which everyone has enjoyed since the time of the Magna Carta. They can't just come along and say, we want to undo these because we want to create a one world government where there's no freedom. They can't do that. So they have to dress it up to make it look like it's in our interest. They have to tell you that there's this problem, there's this danger we're facing. And the solution just happens to be, every time this happens, it just happens to be more and more control, more and more government surveillance, more and more government dictatorship of our finances, more and more hyper-regulation of the economy, increased spending on military and police, new prisons that have been built, which is things like that. I don't think it's a coincidence that every single crisis that comes about, these are the solutions that are offered to us. David Icke puts it very well. It's problem, reaction, solution. You create a problem, you give out the story of what caused the problem, and you offer the solution. And the solution is not only created by the people who engineered or faked the problem in the first place, the solution just happens to be exactly whatever this agenda wants. So this is why we have to keep a cool head. We have to not give in to the engineered fear that the government always impose on us. This terror that they keep hurling in our path all the time. These pitfalls that they just dig in front of us wherever we go. It's demoralizing, and it's meant to be demoralizing. The government wants us frightened. They want us frightened. They want us without hope. They want us cowering so that they can then control us. And so that's basically what they're doing.
Got a question here. It's from chat, so I'm going to get Taylor to read it out for me. Taylor.
All right. Matthew Caddy says, Jason, can you please ask Ben what he thinks of Neil Sanders' take on the pandemic?
Oh, right. I have not heard what Neil has said about the pandemic. I know Neil's an interesting chap, actually. He wrote a very good book about mind control. It's actually in several volumes called Your Thoughts Are Not Your Own. He's written he's written a couple of other books that I've not read yet. He says things I don't agree with at times. But as far as the pandemic goes, I've actually not... Oh, I saw an interview with him the other day, but he didn't... That's the one. That's it, Jason. That's very good. Very good book.
I've got them both. I've got two. I've got them both. Yeah, he sent them to. It's just that he's been on this show a couple of times throughout, and his take on it was that it was a real pandemic, and he'd been vaccinated, and
I'd like to give you a more detailed answer. What I'll do is I can watch one of his interviews. I'll maybe watch the one you did, Jason. But he said several things over the last couple of years, especially which I don't agree with. I don't follow his take on several issues. If he's had this medication, and if he believes this is all real, then I'll have to disagree with him. He's not the only one actually who has taken an unusual, what I would say is a slightly out of character assessment on what's going on. Noam Chomsky's another one. Noam Chomsky was a guy who wrote an excellent book called The Manufacturing of Consent, but it appears that his consent has been manufactured. He's very mainstream on the whole coronavirus issue. Another is Niall Murphy through the opaque lens. He's had the medication too. He does agree with me on some of the issues. He does. I mean, I've spoken to him about it. He does see our point, but he still doesn't believe in his view, there's a problem with the V word, the vaccine, the forced medication.
Just say vaccine. We've been saying vaccine, and it's not. Right. It's not really affected us at all. In fact,
okay,
I've had.
Trust me, I say far worse stuff than that on this channel. Jason knows it all too well.
Maybe I'm being overcautious. Maybe I'm being overcautious then. Yeah.
Well, I know people have had problems when they've mentioned it, but we just don't seem to have it. I think it's because we do give an alternative view, like we have Neil Sanders on it. I mean, when Neil came in here, my phone when he came on this show, my phone were ringing. Everybody's, I want to get on, I want to talk to him. He's this thing, he's that, and he's yada yada yada. And look, I'm just interested in what the guy had got to say. Although I didn't agree with it, it's always interesting to have him on. My own personal view is that he's reinventing himself. Just my own personal view.
He did an interview with a guy who's like an ex-conspiracy theorist. I can't remember the channel. I did actually subscribe to the channel. The guy who used to be a conspiracy theorist, not anymore. And Neil was kind of saying the same thing. And I can't remember all the details of it, but I did watch the whole interview, and he's always interesting, Neil. I mean, getting people on with different opinions is a good thing, Jason. It makes for a better show. It really does. I've actually been on skeptic shows. I was interviewed by a guy called Michael Marshall on Skeptics with a K. I've interviewed skeptics as well on my own show. So the more variety of beliefs, the better. And dissent is always riveting to watch. So keep it up, mate.
Yeah. Well, that's. I mean, Neil's opinion is entitled to his opinion. No, I mean, we don't have to agree. That's the great thing about being a grown up, is that you don't have to agree and fall out. And I do believe he thought I called him a liar on one show, and maybe those words slipped out of my mouth. But I wouldn't have considered him a liar. I wouldn't call him a liar. Go on.
Sure. I was going to say, sorry, Taylor. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to say, about what you said. I honestly don't blame people for falling out with the conspiracy stuff because, while definitely, obviously, the mainstream media and the government is are paid liars, but there's a lot of that in the quote unquote truth movement has really just become more of a cult than anything. I mean, there's been so much false stories told about big events like the JFK assassination, 9/11, etc., even in the alternative media movement, and it's really caused a lot of dissenting opinions to fight each other, and it's really and it really hasn't caused a lot of us to be able to get anything really done, anything really productive done, except just go head to head against each other. And honestly, I feel like that's it can be a bit frustrating to some people, and they just want to leave it. It's like honestly,
Yeah, Galaxia mentions don't forget Slaxer the Vax. I don't think Slaxer is actually. I haven't watched him for ages actually because I find him a bit overwhelming emotionally at times. But I do like his channel. I wish him all the best. But he's certainly not a truther in any way. He's sort of like quite with us on some pages. But on the point you made, Taylor. Yeah, there's lots of different views within the conspirasphere, truth movement, whatever you like to call it. And some of them, they get things wrong. I mean, you mentioned JFK. I don't think it would, that they said that Greer, the driver turned around and shot him with a pistol. That's
No.
actually not true.
Yeah, definitely no.
Yeah, Greer, he looks like from on one angle, if you zoom in on the Zapruder film, that Greer draws a pistol, turns around and shoots. It's just a pattern of light on the film. That's all it is. There's also the guy with someone with an umbrella, and they said that was actually a hidden weapon. No, it wasn't. It was the guy who was making a protest. He was actually a royalist or something. I'm an American royalist. It was a movement that existed in the mid 20th century. So no, they get a lot of things wrong. There's lots of different views on, for example, on 9/11, and I have my own views on that, and there's other people who disagree with me. And I mean, I don't get angry with people who think differently to me. I never do. I don't get angry with Neil. I don't get angry with Niall Murphy. I don't get angry with these people. I mean, but I get angry with the thug element within this movement. That is the people who literally go out to destroy and be abusive and troll and things like that. Those are the people I get angry with. The solution, I think, is try and maintain an atmosphere of calm dialogue, not go crazy and start turning it into some great big war, which is what often happens. And
and sorry, I just wanted to say, honestly, this also applies to. I feel like some people just get too narcissistic and think that everything is a lie, everything is a false flag. Like, say, if anything appears on the media, no matter what it is, it ends up being a lie, and which obviously a lot of it is. But for example, whenever there's like a big mass, like if there's like a school shooting or whatever, I don't automatically listen to the mainstream media, but I also don't automatically feel like that it's just some that it's a complete lie either. I like to look at it's you got to think of it like a courtroom. You have to present both sides of the argument and be like, okay, so which makes more logical sense, which has more evidence, etc. About people that I personally dislike in the truth media, it has to be people like Alex Jones and his ilk. They've done a lot to hurt the truth movement with the things that they say.
Yeah, it's like I said, like it's absolutely true that whenever something horrible like this happens, I'd say don't say anything at all for about 24 hours. Just look at information. Always just look at information and just assess. Sit tight and assess. It's like when Diana was killed in the tunnel. Princess Diana was killed in that tunnel in Paris. There were people putting up forum posts literally within minutes saying things like the CIA did it, Mossad did it, etc., etc., etc. No evidence. No one knew what the evidence was. Nobody knew exactly what had happened. There have been no coroner's reports released. We didn't even know if she was alive or dead at that point. Of course, later on, suspicious elements did emerge, and many, many more people, sensible people who'd been just sitting there and listening for a while, did come forward. I was one of them. I was one of the people who was suspicious, and started speaking out. But it is. We do have to be professional, I think, Tyler. Yeah, we do have to keep our heads. Don't go. I mean, some people obviously this is a job for them, You mentioned Alex Jones; he's one of them. It is a job for them, and obviously they need to earn a living, and sometimes they go for sensation for that purpose, so that they could, because it is essentially an income stream for them. I don't have a problem with people earning a living off what they do, but this must never be prioritized over calm, sensible scholarship. And Alex does fail in that respect many times.
You see, Alex Jones is I think it's probably like Teletubbies when you're a kid. It's an introduction to TV. Alex Jones is like an introduction into this other world. And then when you listen to him for long enough, and then you'll move on, and you'll hear. I'd say listen to everybody, even the guy I sent you the video which we're going to talk about. Even that guy in that video, there was stuff in there that I just didn't agree with, but I kept on with it because I've heard the guy's work before, and I've seen a lot of good stuff. But we'll get into that anyway in a little while. The JFK thing. Did you ever hear of a guy called Mike Dickin?
Was he one of the tramps?
Princess Diana. Sorry, go on.
All right, no. There's Diana, Mike Dickin.
He was a presenter on Talk Sport when it was Talk Radio, and it went into Talk Sport. It was a presenter. He had a morning show, and he used to bring it up all the time that that Diana had been killed, and I think he ended up dying in a road accident. He lived in Cornwall, but obviously commuted to London to do his radio show. And an ex-rally driver, and he was killed on his way home to Cornwall one night. Just went off the road.
Well, when this happens, I do wonder, was it just a car crash? Because people, of course, do have car crashes. Or is something more going on? In the case of Diana herself, there's clearly more going on. I mean, I was actually on night shift when that happened, and we got a call actually from Department of Health. This was actually before it was announced in the news, and they told us to go and put the hospital flag down to half mast, and we knew that by then she was dead. I mean, I didn't actually say anything. No one said anything at the time, but of course there were lots of people who have been people have spoken about certain suspicious elements of things, and then bad things do happen to them, and you've got to ask yourself, well, is that just a coincidence, or is something more going on? Mike Dickin, he rings a bell. I think he may have been one of the people I was listening to back then.
He used to do a morning show, and it wasn't about sport because they didn't use it. I think they changed it to Talk Sport, but he still kept his show in the morning, 10 till 1. And what he'd do is he'd bring that up all the time. But then you see other people that have been in media that did do that around the same time, did bring similar things up, and you see what they've turned into. Like James Whale just turned into a complete tosser. Back in the day, he was asking the same questions, and he was talking about climate change as well. But he's now just turned into a complete. I just wonder whether it's a self-preservation thing. And Mike Dickin probably wasn't the sort of man that would compromise his principles. He used to, when people had phoned in, because it were a phoning show, people had phoned in and they'd say, "Hello, Mike, are you all right?" And he said, "My health is not in question, but yours will be if you don't get on with it. If you don't," that sort of thing. So it was a cantankerous old sort of geezer, but it didn't seem the type of bloke. But you should have a look at some of his stuff.
As far as James Whale goes, it could be, because I used to like James Whale because he had David Icke on, he had like Timothy Good, he's the ufologist, he had people like that on his show all the time. He was, since he had his near-death experience, he was very, very open-minded about all kinds of things. Yet, he did sort of regress, didn't he? And it could be that after Mike Dickin had his accident, someone phoned him up and said, "James, that'll be you next if you don't shut up." It could be. However, that kind of the way they get at you, the way they silence you, that happens probably less often than a lot of researchers think. It's the simply tacit compliance, what they call it, behavioral modification. Those kinds of methods are much, much more widely used. You may have seen things such as the Milgram experiment about how that works, where they test people's ability. Without even knowing it, people comply and people go along with authority and go along with peer pressure and things like that. It's possible that James actually went that way as instead, which is a shame. It's a shame he sold out, but he might not have sold out through deliberate malice. He may have, or deliberate fear. He may not have made a decision to sell out. It may be just a natural drift of his life, because he's pretty elderly now. Yeah.
There was a time when he had cancer, weren't there?
Yeah.
I just wonder whether whether he just thought that he reevaluated things and decided that he weren't going to bring that stuff up anymore, or maybe even thought that he'd been given it. I don't know.
It's possible. It's one of these things that you do wonder, like whether somebody people get into trouble, they get into things happen to them when they start speaking about certain things, and this is all supposedly put down to coincidence. For example, like in the 60s in the United States, many prominent figures were just shot by people who it appeared randomly. There was 3-3, of course, very famously. It was John F. Kennedy, then Martin Luther King, then Bobby Kennedy. They were all killed by individual shooters who seemed to have no connection to anyone else. They were doing it simply for personal reasons, it appeared. Yet when the evidence was looked at, it was discovered that you see, you have to be willing to accept that it's a coincidence, and some people can do that. Some people can say, okay, it's just a coincidence. But once a lot of people, I think they stretch that too far. They stretch it to the point where they'll believe anything's a coincidence. If they toss a coin in its heads 50 times, they'll say that's just a coincidence. Which it could be. It's physically possible to toss a coin and get heads 50 times. It doesn't break any laws of physics if you do that. But to me, that is certainly suggestive of some kind of influence there. I'd want the coin weighed if that was the case. But,
Taylor, what's going on in chat?
Well, right now, basically, everyone is listing off people who were either who they say were agents, or they say were off in the similar manner that you mentioned. Like, say, for example, Welsh Dave says Bill Cooper comes to mind, which I don't necessarily agree with Bill Cooper on some of the things he says, but he was but he seemed like a pretty genuine guy to me. Webby says,
listen, you're not here to agree with anybody, you're here to read the comments.
Yeah, true.
Now, go on,
Webby says, have you seen Meatloaf's connection with the JFK assassination?
Meatloaf?
I don't even know I don't know what he means. I'm just reading the chat.
So what about Jeff C's been mentioned in there, hasn't he, Taylor? Do you
yes,
know
Jeff C. Jeff C. Bebe Rebozo. I'm probably butchering that name. Jeff C. was good, but he had his faults, as we all do. I spoke to him back in 2014. We all have egos.
Right.
And CMB says Jeff C. was a cool dude.
Did you know Jeff C? Is it this Canadian guy? I seem to remember a Canadian guy called Jeff, but really back in the day, sort of 2006.
I've not heard of him.
Well,
and there's some good people coming out of Canada. There's like Alan Watts and people like that. Alan Watt, rather. But I've never heard of that guy, no.
Galaxian, I just want to say this one. Galaxian's put malt loaf. I'm sure he's referring to Jimmy O, who's he's not done a show for a couple of days. So if you're watching Jimmy, don't lose it. Listen, you can be successful or you can be funny. And you've got to decide which one you're going to be. And I think you're far too funny to be successful. So don't give up on your channel. I know he's been a bit despondent and pissed off about doing his channel and stuff. So right, yeah. So let's get to what's behind you. Oh, shall we do that? Shall we do that, or shall we do you had a watch party on Saturday night? Wag the Dog.
That's right. I decided to do a watch party on my YouTube channel about Wag the Dog, because this basically means I just tell my viewers to go off and watch it. Then I do a review. Then I do a live stream. Now, Wag the Dog is a remarkable film which appears to be making some kind of comeback. It's doing a kind of They Live, where it was in the cinema. It was on video, VHS, DVD. It was quite, had its little runs, and then it's sort of been forgotten, an old film. But then it suddenly appears to be. Appearing again in people's consciousnesses. For example, it was trending on Twitter the other day. I can't help thinking this is a film whose time has come, like They Live was. Wag the Dog is a comedy. It's a black comedy from the United States. Stars Robert De Niro, Anne Hesh, Dustin Hoffman, and it is about it's a political intrigue. It's a political scandal goes on. There's a U.S. president who's about to be re-elected. 2 weeks before he gets re-elected, he is. A story comes out that he's involved in a sex scandal, a very serious one involving an underage girl. And what happens is the people at the White House decide to bring in a spin doctor, some kind of, well, it's not exactly what sure his role is, Robert De Niro's character, to try and rescue the president by manipulating the media. And they decide that the only thing that's going to sideline this, to knock it off the headlines, it's so incredible. This is so scandalous. The only thing that will knock this sex scandal off the headlines is if America goes to war. Now, they can't just start a war. So what they do is they say, we'll fake a war in the media. We'll make it look like there's been a war. And no one will know the difference because everyone gets their information from the mainstream media. And so they bring in this Hollywood producer played by Dustin Hoffman. And he basically creates essentially a movie for the news. And it's incredible how it's astonishing what they come up with. They come up with ways and means of manipulating people on an emotional level. They said like heart-rending news stories about children being harmed. You know, there's a famous scene where they actually concoct a fake news story involving a young girl from Albania. They decide Albania because this was the time of the Balkan Wars. So Albania is a country in the Balkans which not many people know about, and they dress her up like an Albanian peasant, and they put a little cat in her arms. You know, what was all these touching scenes, and she like runs away from these terrorists who've just murdered her family, things like this. And
the kitten, yes.
Yeah.
Shall I show what I showed you before?
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, this is incredible.
Because I bought Wag the Dog on Amazon because I wanted to watch. I saw you were doing a watch party, and I thought, right, that gave me an idea. And I looked everywhere for it, and I couldn't find it, so I ended up paying for it on Amazon. And I'm sorry to everybody who thinks that I'm some sort of evil, contributing to evil, but I needed to watch it. So after I'd watched it, there's a part in it where the Albanian, and she's got a kitten. They're talking about she's got to have a kitten, hasn't she? It's the cat, or is it a cat? No, it's got to have a kitten. The cat's no good. And anyway,
what color is it? Yeah, what color should we make it?
If
the president wants
a
white one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the president wants a white one. Well, just after I'd watched that, up popped this on my on Facebook, I think it were. I looked on Facebook afterwards, and this popped up on Facebook. There you go. The Indian girl who wouldn't abandon her dog in a war zone.
Oh man!
There you go. There's a picture of her with the dog. They've got no.
Well, you see, I don't know specifically if that's real or whether it's not. I don't, and it could well be 100% real. But
it's not.
We should not assume this is real. We should keep an open mind with the possibility that this is completely fabricated. I saw another good one, another good example. The Scottish granddad. You know, he's a 61-year-old granddad from Scotland who went to Ukraine to fight as part of this foreign legion. It's like the Spanish Civil War all over again. And I don't know if you saw that news story. And that one was a little bit more obvious. They had a photograph of him, and his head looks a little bit too big. Like they've got the Photoshop slightly wrong. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe even be a deliberate mistake that people involved don't like you. They may not like what they're involved in, and they may be encoding mistakes in deliberately to see if someone spots them. But he was like, he's this granddad. He says he can't bear the thought of these horrible Russians and what they're doing in Ukraine. So he's going to pick up a gun. He's going to go over there and fight. And they got a picture of him dressed in like a military combat utilities, carrying a rifle. He says he's going to give him a bit of basic training. And then he's going to go and fight. He's going to go and fight for those horrible Russians who do horrible things to the poor innocent people of Ukraine and things like this. That to me is, I don't know specifically. I can't prove it, but to me that sounds very false. It sounds very Wag the Dog. Very Wag the Dog indeed.
If you know, I do want to say about the media and their control over the public consciousness. I think one of the best examples of that would have to be when it comes to presidents, American presidents. Has to be the 1976 election of Jimmy Carter, where just before that year, 6 months before the national convention, nobody knew who Jimmy Carter was outside of Georgia, where he was governor. But then the media gave him a blitz, a news blitz. He appeared on this on Times cover, I believe, twice, and Newsweek 3 times, and he was basically inundated all over the written and visual media. And sorry for stumbling over my words. And then by the time of the 1976 general election, when he went up against Gerald Ford, he won the Democratic nominee and became president of the United States, all because he was backed by Zbigniew Brzezinski and David Rockefeller.
Yeah, but Taylor, what you're talking about is it just mirrors exactly the 2008 Obama. I mean, Obama came from nowhere, and he just appeared. It's the same thing. It's the same script over and over again.
And guess what? Both Obama was also mentored by Zbigniew Brzezinski. Both candidates were, and also both candidates have something else in common. The previous year, they were invited to attend the Bilderberg Group.
Oh, that I did not know about. I actually don't know much about Obama. It rise to the presidency. I never really bothered looking into him because to me, Obama's just like he kind of speaks for himself in terms of what kind of person he is and the things he did during his presidency and all that.
He was quite an obscure politician. I mean, I know he wrote a book, but people thought that he wrote this book, and it was a bestseller because he was president. But he actually wrote the book before he was president, and it's only sold a couple of thousand copies. And when he became president, of course, then it became very popular. But this guy, Obama, was it Barry Soetoro or whatever his real name was? His whole past actually is very murky. For example, he went to Columbia University, and his classmates were interviewed, and apparently they'd never heard of him. Things like that. You'd think they would remember. In fact, they'd be bragging about it. I went to school with the president. Yay! But there's all kinds of weird. So it's the way they create these people, these figureheads, and they are figureheads. Yeah. Is exactly that. They get. It's usually somebody behind the scenes who has the real power. Brzezinski's one of them. There's several others. There's Henry Kissinger. You mentioned the Rockefellers. Yeah. These elite families within the United States. There's a whole list of these. The United States officially doesn't have an aristocracy because it abolished the monarchy in the 1789 revolution. However, they have the equivalent of that. Very often, interestingly, they're related to the European aristocrats as well. These are the people who tend to be around regardless of who's president, regardless of which party the president represents. They seem to be sort of these ubiquitous string pullers who you have to dig a little behind. You have to dig a little bit deeper to find them. The information's there, but you can't just consume the headlines if you want to get the truth.
And I think one of the biggest, one of the best places to look at is called Foreign Affairs, the journal by the Council on Foreign Relations, which is pretty much the main, which up until maybe even now is still for the last 100 years has been the main picker of the of the presidential candidates as well as in media and industry for that matter. You know. You guys have the same thing over there. The what is it called? The International Affairs, something like that.
The Royal Institute of International Affairs. It's very similar, yeah. And again, members are prime ministers and people like that, and movers and shakers within the civil service. Again, very often they're members of this group. Chatham House is usually known as as a nickname, and you'll very often hear them talking about Chatham House rules, because what goes on at the RAAA is secret. They don't talk about it in front of the media. It's even though this is not it's not as cloaked as the Bilderberg Group. It does have an official presence. It is if you remember, you can't talk about what's discussed there. It's all strictly confidential. So they said, sorry, Chatham House rules. However, when you see different prime ministers and different individuals coming out with the same policies, you can probably guess the kind of things that they do talk about when they're at these meetings.
Yeah, and this also goes to Klaus Schwab's school that he had back in the 90s, where a lot of these current-day politicians came from as well. Not just politicians, but big figureheads as well. Jeff Bezos came from it. Bill Gates came from it. Justin Trudeau came from it. Tony Blair. You know, a lot of these big figureheads came from that school. And that's why the worldwide reaction to the COVID crisis was pretty much unilaterally the same.
Well, I think. Sorry. Go on.
I was going to say Klaus Schwab is really a very underrated player. Until recently, he's been a very underrated player on this grand chessboard, to quote the title of Zabrinsky's book. He actually founded the Davos set in 1970, more than 50 years ago, and he's been doing this ever since. And he's only really come to the attention of the conspiracy in the last couple of years.
Yeah. Mostly because I feel like that he's ready to come out in the open these days. I mean, with his whole great reset and all that, he's. I feel like before maybe I feel like before the what's his organization called? I forgot. I'm sorry.
The
World Economic
Forum. Yeah, World Economic Forum.
Yeah, my bad. Yeah, I feel like that they were whatever you want to call them, Illuminati, whatever. I feel like they were trying to build it all up, trying to get that to be the next big group. And now that they've pretty much settled it all, I feel like that they're ready to come out in the open and pretty much just be the next big group, the next big Council on Foreign Relations / Bilderberg group / whatever you want to call it.
They have kind of broken cover, haven't they? And that's another distinct difference that's occurred in the last couple of years. This transparency, they become far more barefaced and blunt about what they want and what they're doing. Again, that to me indicates that's probably they're in a bad way. I don't think it's overconfidence. Some people interpret it as overconfidence. I interpret it as some kind of desperation. At least I hope that's what it is.
Yes. Jason, sorry if I'm taking the.
Yeah, sorry, mate. Yeah.
No, listen, it's fine. It's fine, mate. I'm just sat here. I've had a joint. I can sit here and listen to you going on all night, making. But I was just going to say, as a joke, obviously, that's the longest comment ever that somebody's written in the chat room.
Oh, sorry.
No problem at all. No problem at all. Yeah, where I don't even know where we started from. I mean, you've gone.
We were talking about the presidents and about Jimmy Carter, and we talked about the election. And where were we for that? Trying to go back on our train of thought.
We were talking about you're talking about how the media was really
wag the dog. Wag the dog.
Yeah, wag the dog. Yes,
that's what we were talking about. Yeah.
But it's an example. It's an example. It's relevant to the wag the dog situation. The wag the dog was kind of an emergency scenario. They said we got to dig the president out of this hole. Whether he actually did rape a young girl or not, it doesn't matter. According to them, they just want to get him reelected. So they have a fake war. It includes a war. All the trimmings you could imagine were there. There's a good old shoe, the fake war hero.
That reminded me. I was trying to think, who would be that shoe man, and I thought probably Pat Tillman would be the shoe. Pat Tillman.
No.
He were an NFL player, and he decided he was going to, because he was so outraged by 9/11, he decided he was going to quit his NFL millions of dollars contract and go and fight with Army. Then he starts writing letters home saying, this is actually not what I've signed up for. It's just a phony war. And then he ended up shooting himself twice in the head.
Did he actually shoot himself? I mean, I heard he got killed in action. I know who you mean now.
He was suicided. He was. They said he committed suicide, but there were 2 gunshot wounds to his head.
All right, it's a terribly tragic situation because he was an American footballer, and when he saw 9/11, it's understandable because everyone was shocked. Americans in particular were just shocked and horrified by what happened, and all he saw was his country under attack, and he wanted to do something about it. It's understandable. He didn't have the information that the rest of us within the conspiracy sphere have, and he went and he ended up losing his life, which is very sad. But in a sense, I think the good old shoe scenario is more like Jessica Lynch. Do you remember? It's more in common with the Jessica Lynch story. Have you heard of that one?
No, I've not heard of that one. No.
Now, Jessica Lynch was a young woman in her early 20s who joined the army. Now, she wasn't a career soldier. She wasn't a lifer. She wanted to be a nursery nurse, I think, but she had to get a degree at university. And she didn't want to take out a loan, but she thought she'll get it on the GI Bill, serve in the army for a bit. Get it on the GI Bill, so it's for ex-servicemen and women, and she thought, well, if I join the army is okay for a couple of years, I'll just walk up and down a parade ground and things like that, and then that'll be, Bob's your uncle. Instead of the parade ground, she found herself driving a logistics convoy in Iraq, She got ambushed, broke her leg, ended up in the hospital in Iraq. The Iraqi government wanted to interrogate her, which of course is a horrible. They're brutal. You know, you saw what happened to those pilots in the 91 war. They were beaten and forced to make false confessions and things like that. The doctors and nurses at the hospital took pity on her and decided to give her back to the Americans. So they contacted the Americans and told them what happened. And they said, we want to give her back to you. We don't want to hand her over to the government. The Americans said, thank you very much. Please bring her to this point at a certain time, and an ambulance will be there ready to take her away to safety. But before they had the chance to do that, helicopters were heard landing on the roof of the hospital. These special forces guys started running down the stairwells, bursting into the wards, waving their guns around, handcuffing people, doctors, nurses, even patients. They put Jessica on a stretcher and carried her up to the helicopter and flew her away. And it's pretty obvious what happened. As soon as they heard about her, and they decided, rather than just go and pick her up from the doctors and nurses, who very kindly decided to give her away at a great risk to themselves, because they were no doubt facing their own charges and their own danger from the government by doing that. They decided to turn it into a heroic rescue operation. They bursting out of the evil clutches of the Iraqis. So that was a kind of good old shoe situation. She would then become a war heroine. She's not said anything. She probably was not allowed to. But the doctors and nurses have been interviewed, and there's a documentary about it. So that's an example of a real life kind of wag the dog type scenario. They were going to lie about it. They were going to lie about how Jessica came back to the US. It didn't quite work, but that's an example of the kind of deception they play. It gets more sinister, like the baby incubator story from the 91 war.
Yeah, I showed that. I showed that on a show last week.
That's basically to summarize. A young woman crying her eyes out from Kuwait was interviewed in the UN, saying how the Iraqi soldiers were killing the babies by pulling premature babies out of incubators. She actually was the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to the UN, and she was also a drama student, which is why she could cry and act very, very persuasively. But it was a complete fabrication. But yet it was repeated as fact in the news. And it echoes something incredible that happened like over 70 years earlier. The July crisis, the Germans invade Liège in Poland. According to the Daily Herald, which is today was called The Sun, and the Daily Mail and all these other newspapers, when the Kaiser's army walked into Liège, they took the babies out of the mother's arms and impaled them on their bayonets and paraded around the street. And there was even stories of them drinking the blood of babies and things like this. When the British Expeditionary Force went over to the continent to begin the war, the worst war militarily that's ever happened, they were motivated with this story. They all knew about these horrible Germans and what they've been doing to babies. But again, it was made up. It was a fabrication. Yet the trick works. If a trick keeps working, they're going to keep using it. They will not stop using these tricks until they stop working.
Sorry, Jason. If you don't mind, I just want to say, I just want to give a response to that, and that's there's a lot of falsities been told regarding the Germans in both world wars, and
here he goes.
I'm not going to start talking about that. I just wanted to say, I think the first major lie told to the American public to get them to go to war with another nation was the Spanish-American War, when we were told about, you had the German brutes in World War One. With the ape-like creature holding the damsel in distress. I'm sure you know about that, right?
Yeah.
Well, in just 20 years earlier, at the end of in the Spanish-American War, they had the exact same thing going on, except it was the Spanish brutes, and they were stepping. It was stepping. The ape-like creature stepping on the grave of the USS Maine, which was the main trigger point to the war, which was yet another fabricated lie. And that's, to me, was like the big start to show. That was like the big test run, essentially, to get Americans, to get used to the idea that, we can use lies to perpetrate in order to start wars for whatever geopolitical or financial reason that we see fits. and it's it's been used ever since. I'm sure that it stretches back much farther for the British because Britain's been around a lot longer than America has.
Well, it's probably been in there the same amount of time, really. I mean, it's just a piece of land, isn't it? It's been inhabited by whoever since whenever. It's
a good point, though. Yeah, it's a good point, though, Taylor, because the USS Maine was a US Navy warship that was moored. It was actually moored in Havana Harbor at the time in Cuba. And apparently there was it was either a limpet mine put there by a diver, or someone sneaked on board and put a charge aboard the ship, which blew it up and it sank. Now, again, who did it? It was blamed on the Spanish. This was not questioned. Yeah, it was. I've seen analytical reports on that, which indicate there was no evidence that the Spanish ever did it. And then this was a long time ago. It was 1898. To this day, no evidence has ever surfaced that the Spanish did it. There was no confession from the Spanish. After the war, nothing was revealed. So why should we believe it? This is like the Gulf of Tonkin, which really was the trigger that got US into the Vietnam War. And of course, we could go on forever listing examples. The oldest one I've come across was actually 2,000 years ago, the Great Fire of Rome. You ever heard the phrase "Nero fiddled while Rome burned"? Nero was the Caesar, the emperor of Rome, and he actually, it's likely he started that fire himself. His own agents lit that fire, and it was blamed on his political rivals.
I know
as it always is.
If you don't mind me saying this, well, first, there's a comment.
Just a second. Hang on a minute, Taylor. Just calm down a little bit here. How much cake have you had? I
haven't had any cake.
We had too much cake.
I haven't had any cake.
Sugar.
I haven't had any sugar.
I'm going to give you this question. All right, I'm going to give you this question, and then because I'm going to go and get myself a drink of dandelion and burdock. Do you need a break?
I could do one just a couple of minutes if that's all right.
Yeah, all right. What I'm going to do then is everyone mutes the mic. I'm going to play a record. It's just going to be blah 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 blah. I'll play that one. 3 minutes and 45 seconds. So just give us a break. So we'll see you in. Did you see that? Ben just disappeared into that crop circle. Fantastic. Let's play a record. Let's hope it's not too loud. See you in a few minutes.
I'm gonna have some fun with this one here. Woo-hoo! In the morning, when I wake up, all I want is Mary Joanna. In the evening, when I'm thinking, all I want is Mary Joanna. If you look in my eyes, you will see what I've done. Every minute, every hour of every day. But life is like a smoke. In the end, I'm gonna choke. So all I do is live my life from day to day.
Oh my God, you know you better watch yourself because I know you're waiting on that one. Cause I'm telling you, consonant. Cause you know the one that said, take over and you let me see you do that run. Run, the one that they clan, the one that done. Cause I know you cannot be me now, what you wanna do. Cause I'm about to break it down, me, cause you know you cannot fade me now, let you wanna. You better back it down now, because I'm telling you, what bar, bun bar, can I wonder. Because you know you like the way you put that pick up. Cause I'm telling all you fools what happened. And in a mercy. Now what you wanna do? And in a mercy. Now what you wanna do? And in a mercy. Now what you wanna do? And in a mercy.
If you look in my eyes, you'll see what I've done. Every minute, every hour of every day. But life is like a smoke. In the end, I'm gonna choke. So all I do is live my life from day to day. You got to lick it, stick it, bend it, crease it, stack it, burn it, pack it, roll it, poke it, roach it, smoke it, then you pass it to me. You got to lick it, stick it, bend it, crease it, stack it, burn it, pack it, roll it, poke it, roach it, smoke it, then you pass it to me.
Come on, baby girl, let's get it going on. I'ma hit the highway and do it my way. It ain't no game, girl, so I don't play games. I keep it up straight, right up in your face. So make your mind up, cause life is too short. I got the vest on, boy, put your belt on. Stop acting all cool like Kanye West, boy. You'll be riding through the wire and the camera get on fire. You don't want that, no, I don't want that, no. This goes out to pimps and chicks, so slow. Hit the backseat when you're doing the licking, kissing, squeezing. Do the damn thing, man.
You got to lick it, stick it, bend it, crease it, stack it, burn it, pack it, roll it, poke it, roach it, smoke it, you pass it to me. You got to lick it, stick it, bend it, crease it, stack it, burn it, pack it, roll it, poke it, roach it, smoke it, you pass it to me. You got to lick it, stick it, bend it, crease it, stack it, burn it, pack it, roll it, poke it, roach it, smoke it, you pass it to me. You got to lick it, stick it, bend it, crease it, stack it, burn it, pack it, roll it, poke it, roach it, smoke it, then you pass it to me.
Marijuana 2016. That's our Heath there. Singing his song back in 2016. That's 6 years old, that song. It's amazing. Anyway, welcome back to Raconteurs News. I've got myself and Taylor, the birthday boy, and we've got Ben Emlyn Jones, who's joined us this evening. And we've been talking about plenty of things, but I've got I think this. Sorry, did you want to bring something up, Ben?
No, well, apart from the video you sent me, which we're going to talk about at some point, aren't we?
Yes, yeah, we are. Yeah, in fact, I think we should move on to that.
Wait, do you mind if I read out this comment first that was posted in the chat towards you, Jason?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, just read. I wanted to just read that out anyway. Go on.
Did anyone see those? Well, actually, hold on. Let me see who wrote this first. This was written by. I actually don't know, but basically, someone in the chat said, "Did anyone see those supposed French headlines today reporting that a French judge declared a vaccine death as suicide as the person chose the experimental injection?" At Raconteurs News.
I've not seen that, no, but that's astonishing. I mean, did that really? That was the ruling. It was suicide. Oh,
yeah, I've actually seen that. Yeah, some of these companies, like health insurance companies, have been saying that people have chose to take a publicly admitted experimental drug, and so they're calling it assisted suicide.
Bloody. So I won't swear on this show, but that is astonishing. That is disgusting. I mean, it flies in the face of every piece of rhetoric that was put in front of us before we chose to take this medication. And what's more, there wasn't. How much choice was there? How much were these policies, these encouragement policies, put out there? You can't go to a restaurant. France was particularly bad at this. You can't go to a restaurant unless you've had this medication. You can't go on a bus or your trains unless you've had this medication. Surely, at some point, that's got to constitute coercion under law. So the reality is the exact opposite of this ruling. I do hope these people appeal, or the relatives of the people, because the coroner who passed that ruling is absolutely so deceptive. It's unbelievable.
There may have been a bit of French legislation snuck in while everyone was sort of looking at the pandemic that meant that they could do that. You never know. I mean, we don't know French law.
They must have done it very quietly. They did it quietly behind the scenes while the news was saying, get this medication, get it. It's got to protect you. Please go out and get it. It's very simple. Little needle in the arm and you'll be safe.
Yeah.
Then get the next one, then get the next one, and then get the next one, and get the next one. Don't forget the boost. Just kept going on and on.
Yeah, and then you end up with situations where we've got adverts on TV now where there's a young girl just drops down playing football and just drops down cardiac arrest, and it's a British Heart Foundation. It's absolutely abhorrent that it's cashing in on it, and it's just horrendous what's going on. So let's get to something else where, like, what's behind you. I sent you a video the other day. So just explain to everybody, because I watched it and I understood quite a lot of it, but I probably not as much as you did. So a video by Jerry Croft.
Now, this is a guy I've not heard of before, but he was very, very interesting. He's a psychology professor who's very, very open-minded about crop circles. He actually comes out with this. He came out with an analysis which indicates that some of them are actually not made by human hands. This is something I actually agree with. Of course, a lot of them are, but not all of them. And he particularly points to one that's known as the scarab. Now, this is from the early 2000s that appeared in southern England, where most crop circles appear. And it does literally look like a scarab beetle. Now, what he finds interesting about that is the scarab was actually, in ancient Egypt, was something sacred. It seemed to have particular interest for the ancient Egyptian culture. There's lots of jewelry that's been found from ancient Egypt that is shaped like the scarab. The scarabs have been found, for example, with mummies. They're put in with mummies in tombs and things like this, the dead bodies of scarabs. And this guy goes into the mythology of the scarab. It's considered a symbol of fertility and rebirth. But he also says that he goes through the story of Seth. This is this demonic figure, the brother of Osiris being the most powerful god in the Egyptian pantheon. And about how that there'd been Seth fought a battle with Osiris and almost killed him. Osiris's wife Isis, who was a virgin mother who gave birth to a son,
and his sister.
Yeah, and exactly, there was exactly a sister's brother and sister, and husband and wife, and she was a virgin queen who gave birth to a son on the 25th of December, I believe it or not. Horus, the savior god. It's interesting how these dates keep coming up, and that's it's the story basically goes that since then there's been he believes that this story symbolizes the battle between the forces of goodness and darkness. So, for example, the battle between Horus, the savior, the force of good in the world, the god that was specifically created to bring salvation to the world, goodness and virtue, and Seth, the god of destruction, the god of evil, the god of hatred and greed and all these negative emotions. And these two have basically been battling it out ever since. Yes, scarab brooches. These are jewelry. This Spanish chicken has just said, and he interprets that as what's going on in the world at the moment in terms of politics. Now, he says some things I think are true and some that are false. But he mentions something. I've got a list of the things he talks about. He said that he refers to what he calls cycles of history. Now, history runs through certain periods of prosperity and peace, and then war and depression. And he believes that we're in a kind of Great Depression situation too, which is similar to the early 20th century. So it's almost like it's been a 100-year cycle. He mentions the disease that has broken out. Firstly, there was the Spanish flu. Almost 100 years after the Spanish flu, COVID-19 appeared, things like that. And he mentions several people, for example, Paul Krugman. Now, he's a Nobel Prize winning, I believe, economist, and talks about how all the signs of a second Great Depression are coming. Interestingly, he also mentions alien invasion, which I think is quite amusing. This guy, that's something I found out about him independently. The guy in the video doesn't talk about it, but Paul Krugman has mentioned that alien invasion, and he also mentions climate change. Now, this is where I think he gets it wrong. He gives out basically the Greta Thunberg line about climate change. And he even brings up Guy McPherson. That's astonishing. You see, I believe there's a conspiracy related to climate change. I think there's a big cover-up of what's really going on with climate change. Guy McPherson agrees there's a cover-up, but his vision of the cover-up is completely different. I believe that climate change is a red herring. He believes that climate change is actually much more severe than we've been told, and that all the climate scientists are basically conspiring on an open secret kind of level to keep it from the public. So, but then what's the guy called in the video again? This guy?
Jerry Croft.
Jerry Croft. He talks about Guy McPherson very, very approvingly, like, so no, Guy McPherson's got it right, things like that, which is, I don't know how he worked that out. So I don't know if I think this Jerry Croft guy says, but it is very interesting that he interprets the goings on within politics and within the environment, within the economy, as essential, and indeed in terms of the rise of disease, as a spiritual battle between the forces of good and evil, as described by the ancient Egyptians. And of course, the Egyptians weren't the only ones. I mean, this is a common recurring mythology which can be found all over the world, but he uses the Egyptians as a metaphor. So interesting video there.
Yeah, I've watched it. Listen, I've watched him before. In fact, I first saw, I watched one of his videos on crop circles when I was in hospital in 2018 after I'd had my leg amputated. And I sent it to Andrew Johnson. And Andrew Johnson came back to me and said, yeah, you know, a good video. He's really, all right, I don't agree with it. And I had to really, I was sat there when I was watching it and Greta Thunberg pops up, you know, I'm really, it's like putting your fingers down a blackboard. But I did, and I endured through that. And for me, I think that if whatever climate change is, whatever the science of climate change is very real because it's affecting everybody. You know, even the myth of it is it's affecting everybody. So it is having an impact on the world. So from that point of view, I thought that you know, that I could see where he was coming from, you know, because he obviously is a scientist, isn't he? Which sort of like takes him from one extreme to another. He gets Greta Thunberg out, and yet he's telling you UFOs that, you know, that they're not extraterrestrials are making these crop circles. You know, it's one extreme to other. So I just like the way that he's fairly balanced about it. I watched one last night called Gods of War or something like that, about World War III. Very interesting. You should watch it. Just from, you know, he didn't come from any side, but he tells us where World War III is, and he sort of makes this point that the tinderbox really is Gaza.
Right,
Israel and Palestine. And he said that the reason why it's a tinderbox is because most wars, they're won on home soil, aren't they? You know, Afghanistan, Russia invaded Afghanistan and they lost. America did the same into Afghanistan and then they lost. So if you've got a home advantage, you've got that. If you're at home, because it's your land, you will do anything to protect it. So you get this lunacy that comes over you, which means that you'll do more than the people who are trying to take the land off you. If you understand what I mean. And
that's why invasions very rarely work. Yeah.
And because in Israel, in this disputed territory, whatever you want to call it, Israel and Gaza and Palestine, because they both feel like they're on home soil, they've both got that lunacy, you know, that extra lunacy that's given to because you're defending your homeland, what you perceive as your homeland. So anyway, it's really interesting. He's got some really good, interesting stuff. His name's Professor Jerry Croth. But the interesting thing is, I noticed that War of the Religions, I think it was called something like that. The Holy War, it's called. It only done about 3 weeks ago, but I did notice that the first video that I saw of his, I looked back and it had got like over 500,000 views. And now this one that he's done 3 weeks ago, and you know that you get most of your views in the first few weeks that you're putting something out, or the first few days of putting something out. That's when you get the most views. And this one's been out 3 weeks, and it had only got 1,700 views. You know, I just found that really weird.
Do you think it was shadow banned? Like,
I have no idea.
Yeah, because YouTube can do that. They can lower the visibility of your without telling you, without even knowing. But it's interesting that because the Middle Eastern thing, the conflict in the Holy Land does seem to be particularly virulent and particularly long lasting, and seems to be going on for much longer. And it could be deliberate. It could be to do with the fact that it is the Holy Land and there's something spiritual about it in the sense that Professor Croft actually meant when he talked about Horus and Seth. That's a big subject to go on for a long time. But you mentioned about climate change. You said that, that it has an effect, and it does. Things don't have to be real to have an effect. If people believe them, and indeed everything in with the mainstream is telling us to believe them. We've even got this sweet young girl, Greta Thunberg, who is a terrified member of the next generation, who we're all supposed to feel guilty when she says, how dare you, stop the blah blah blah. She essentially she plucks your heartstrings, a bit like that Indian girl with the dog did, a bit like Jessica Lynch. It's very similar. I think the poor kid is actually, she's obviously she's got a learning difficulty, you can tell, and I don't like the way they're abusing her, quite frankly. But the point is that people are looking at this and they're thinking, we need to do something about it. It's like Professor Mayer Hillman said, we don't. These changes to our society have to be made, or literally the planet's going to die, and we're all going to die. The ice caps are going to melt. We're going to have a massive flood. Everyone's going to die, and it's going to be a massive disaster. So, therefore, I know you like freedoms. I know you like these civil rights. I know you like independent finances. We know all these things. We know you like traveling and whenever you like, and getting on a plane whenever you want. Well, you can't do that anymore. Your life is going to have to be completely controlled. And because it's not because we are nasty people who want to create a global tyranny, you understand. It's just, if we don't, the Earth's going to die. So, in a sense, climate change to me is the ultimate problem reaction solution. And it's one that's they bring it about every so often. Every time there's the COP26, there's some kind of international regulation, deindustrialized China, etc., etc., etc. And also the way people like Dr. David Bellamy and Johnny Ball and other people who disagree with all this and say it's all a big scam are treated. They're silenced. They're called names. They are essentially put up as thought criminals in the true Orwellian sense. They're paraded on TV as pariahs. All that is, as long as if it's real in people's head, it's going to have an effect. If people believe it, it's going to have an effect.
Gulf of Tonkin?
Yeah, if people believe Gulf of Tonkin, exactly. The Gulf of Tonkin people were horrified by it. US sent over, I think, the Department of Defense sent over a couple of hundred military advisors to South Vietnam. 10 years later, 2 million people are dead. So these emotions that are brought up in people, and they are emotions, it's not logic, it's emotional. That's the point of Wag the Dog. Everything that comes out it appeals to your feelings rather than your thoughts. They know how to do that. So these psychological warfare experts know how to do this to people. They've had a century of experience. And so if people believe it, then the people will behave as if it's real. As long as they behave as if it's real, it doesn't matter if it's real or not.
Yeah, that's why it's so easy. I mean, you're indoctrinated from a very young age to believe everything that's on TV, and in the news and stuff. So it's hardly surprising. We've got no critical thinkers whatsoever within mainstream. They put clowns in front of us. What do you think to Brian Cox? What are your personal thoughts on Brian Cox?
Oh God! Oh dear me! Oh, he is a revolting individual. He's not only is he a personally very unpleasant person. I mean, he's rude. He's aggressive. I've seen outtakes of some of the programs he's on, where he is extremely unpleasant, and I would say anti-scientific. Not just anti-scientific, but he usually calls people like us names. But he knows everything there is to know about particle physics. I don't doubt that. Although some of his colleagues said he was a sort of very average scientist, very mediocre. He got like a 2.2 degree and ended up he scraped through a job at CERN. But he has shiny white teeth and silky black hair and smooth skin. And so when BBC came along, wanted to make a documentary about Albert Einstein, a star was born. Opportunity knocked, a star was born. And since then, he's been wheeled out on TV show after TV show to talk about everything except particle physics. He's put across as an expert commentator on every subject except the only subject he knows anything about. So he I think is a major propagandist. He may not even know it. He may be just too arrogant to understand how he's being used. He may be the ultimate useful idiot.
Sounds like Bill
but-
Gates.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
I'm
what
sure-
happened here?
I bet you they're good mates. I bet you they're friends. I bet you.
Probably.
Bill Gates, yeah.
I
so,
just
yeah.
went then. I just disappeared. I don't know where I went. It just went off.
Oh
And
right.
the thing started going funny, but I've just come back on.
Oh,
Just as quickly as I went, I came back.
All right. So if no one's reporting any problems in the chat, so presumably we're still broadcasting. It says we're live.
Yeah,
What was
yeah.
you said before about Oh, we're talking about you said something before, Jason, before Cox. What was it you said? You said something interesting before Cox. You brought up Cox. Cox always distracts me, doesn't he?
Yeah, someone said don't get him started on Cox.
Who set this up? Who set this situation up? They know
well,
exactly how to get me right, Red. They know what buttons to press with me, don't they?
Oh, I thought they were talking about me because the word Cox. Get it? Get it?
No, it's
Middle schooler
Yeah.
joke.
all right.
I didn't hear that, Taylor. I'm assuming it weren't worth listening.
No,
Jimmy,
oh, good.
go on, Taylor. Go on. You.
Oh, sorry. I was just making a joke. His last name's Cox. Get it? Get it? Get it?
No, sorry, mate. I don't get it.
This has just gone out completely over my head. That I mean,
Is this
I don't
American
even know what
humour?
he's talking about. He's always bringing Cox up.
I can't even laugh at Friends, so American humor, I'm afraid, is something that doesn't quite get it. We are
I don't think there
divided
is
by a
anything
common language.
I don't think there's such a thing as American humor.
Well, it is for Americans, I think, obviously, but we are divided by a common language and the Atlantic Ocean when it comes to jokes. I'm sorry, Taylor. Sorry, mate.
Nah, it's fine. It wasn't meant to be a good joke anyway. I was just basically making fun and making a middle school joke, essentially. Like, oh, he said Cox. Ha ha.
Oh, dear me.
Okay.
All right. Listen, Taylor, calm down, man. You're supposed to be reading comments. What's happening in the UFO world? I mean, I've not really took much notice over the last few months. What's been going on? Has there been much going on?
Well, unfortunately, I've sort of lost interest in it a bit. I mean, I haven't lost interest in UFOs generally, but the the new ufology, this kind of post 2017 TTSA ATIP sort of thing, has stagnated. I feel that there's very little progress being made. Of course, people like Christopher Mellon, Lou Elizondo, they're still appearing on various interviews, but these interviews are becoming a bit repetitive. And I'd like to. I mean, I know they keep saying that this is very interesting. They have a lot of things lined up they can't talk about yet. But basically, they need to do a poo or get off the pot. Basically,
Sounds like Richard Gage.
Yeah, it seems we do need some kind of. I'd like to see some kind of breakthrough, but I can't just sit listening to this sort of thing over and over again and saying, yeah, don't worry, something's coming. I'm a patient man, but I'm not that patient. So they seem to be like. I know some people say they're shills, they're agents, they're working for the CIA, but I don't believe that. I mean, it's possible, but I've seen no evidence of that. But I do feel the UFO situation now it's kind of losing momentum, which is a shame because those heady days of 2017, when it all came out in the New York Times, made me think, this is more progress than we've made like in 70 years. And then suddenly it's all over the papers, and I think this must mean something. This must be going somewhere, but it hasn't. So I'm still waiting. I will pick it up the moment something comes across which is worth picking up.
A UFO, apparently, according to Jimmy, a UFO war just reported over Sheffield, and apparently it sucked the brain out of an American correspondent through the wires and sucked it up to the mothership. There you go, Taylor. You're not going down very well on your birthday as well. 28 years old.
Leave the Yanks alone, guys. But I'll tell you
so
what. Sightings, though, seriously, there was a major sighting over northwest Ireland last week that seems very impressive to me. Thomas Sheridan's done like a couple of things about it. There's multiple witnesses. The quite very positive descriptions of an object. It was well lit. It appears to be a particular shape. It's a sort of semi-triangular. Some people describe it as looking like letter M. Multiple witnesses across Galway, Donegal, and that area, northwest coast of Ireland. That it doesn't, and the description doesn't resemble any known object. It's clear, it's positive, and it is doesn't resemble a known object. So I'm curious to see where that goes.
Spanish Chicken has put, what's Ben's opinion on the Basis project with Miles?
Oh, Miles is well, he's a good personal friend of mine, Miles, and I like what he does. I mean, he's faced enormous challenges in terms of the work he does. He's faced financial challenges. He's been attacked by the sort of thug element that I was talking about earlier. Miles and I have our differences, and we don't always agree on everything. Some of the people he puts on his show vary in credibility, in my view, from very, very good to very, very bad. Yet, I think he is a dedicated individual who is really doing a hell of a lot for this subject. He's dedicated his life to this. He's a real workhorse within the field, and I wish him luck. I'll continue to do everything I can to support him.
Oh, what is this Basis project then?
The Basis project is it's something. It's basically set up by Miles long ago. In fact, it was over 30 years ago now. He set this up, and because he was contacted by some people, a guy called Barry King, who there were several other people who claimed to have been working at a deep underground military base in Berkshire beneath the village of Peasmore. Now, I've been to Peasmore. I tried to look for evidence of this myself. I couldn't find any specifically. I did find something very interesting around the laboratory, not Cullum, one of the locations where there's supposedly an entrance. So Miles investigated. He made a number of videos, and this inspired him to. He'd already been a seasoned ufologist. He'd started in his youth in Ireland, but he decided to continue to investigate. This led on to other fields of research, and what the Basis project is today, which it runs conferences. He has regular video uploads. He's been banned from all kinds of places like YouTube. He's had one of his channels lost. It hasn't stopped him. He's still going. So yeah, he's a good guy generally. Don't believe the hype about him. There's a lot of people have said some nasty things about him which are not true.
I wouldn't read out about him anyway. So you know, I don't. If someone writes something nasty about somebody, I mean, I think it says more about the person if they're going to put it down and put it into a public domain. And you know, if you've got a problem with somebody, it should be all sorted out behind closed doors.
I have actually specifically debunked, I mean, in detail, the claims that have been made by various people, but I won't go onto this show. It's basically, it's something I don't like doing, but people have done the same to me. The skeptic thug element is very creative, actually, in what it does. In coming up with stories about people which appear superficially convincing. When you look under the surface, they're not.
Right. Okay. Well, we know there's people that
I said skeptic thug element. Apologies, that's a slip of the tongue. I meant conspiracy thug element, the truth movement thug element.
Right. Okay. People with different opinions. I mean, you can't have a different opinion. What can you have?
Well, it's like things, though, isn't it? If we're going to just to say, if we're going to face some kind of breakdown when the deep state falls, or the Illuminati, whatever you want to call them, when it falls, we're going to be left in a society with this drug we become addicted to. This authoritarianism is going to go. There's going to be no rehab center for us to check into. We're going to have to do cold turkey. We're going to have to rebuild society as we would like it to be. Now, how are we going to do that if we don't even understand basic logic and ethics? If we don't understand the concept of justice and the concept of a fair trial. We have ordeal by internet. This is medieval justice. These people are using within the conspiracy sphere. People who should know better.
But it's just mirroring the mainstream. You know, people get cancelled. It's just the same thing. This is what I've been saying. This is why I like this show as it is. I don't want to be. You know, there are people that do want to get the message out, and then it gets to a point where you've got to share a stage with somebody you don't agree with, and instead of you being able to say, "I don't agree with what he just said," you can't, because otherwise your part on that stage is gone. And so people have to fall into line. It's just how humans are. And if that's what you want to do, you see, I only want people to listen to me that need to, that need to listen to me. So it's becoming the alternative, or so-called alternative. It's just becoming a mirror image of the mainstream. just bitchy gossip, nonsense. And
I'd say
you don't want part of that, do you?
years.
Sorry?
I would say it's been like that for years. I mean, my opinions on certain things that you don't agree with.
How are we going to cope? How are we going to cope when we are left on our own without this Freudian father figure who we have this sort of, in some ways, love-hate relationship with? How are we going to cope when we have to run society ourselves? When there's so many people within our community who behave like this, who don't even understand the basics of justice.
The basics of decency and being a human.
We're going to have to. People are going to have to. Some people are going to have a lot of growing up to do, basically, within our community. And I hope they do it before it's too late.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Somebody asked a question about Matthew Williams. Who was that? It's gone now. But someone asked a question
I
about
put it up,
Matthew Williams. Yeah, I know Matthew Williams. Yeah, he used to be one of the man-made crop circle people. As a result, this is an example of what I'm talking about. A lot of people turned against him because he's one of the man-made crop circle people. He's also a believer in the 100% man-made hypothesis. However, I don't have a problem with that. I don't, like I said, I don't get angry at people for disagreeing with me. I get angry at people who call me names and slander me. So Matthew's never done that. Matthew's always been good to me. I've met him a few times and spoken to him. We've done a couple of shows together. And he's now sort of urbexing secret bases, which is quite exciting. His latest project is to try and uncover secrets in undercover bases and things like that. RAF Rudlow Manor and places like that.
Wow. Yeah, so that's what you think of him. I think it were Chris Partridge. I don't know. I can't remember. I know it was. I know it were a regular because I did see the.
I think it was him. Yeah, I think it was Chris. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm just having a look at these comments that have.
Rizzy Tuber says, Raconteurs News. Does Ben have a view on the animal mutilation phenomenon?
It's something real. It is generally mysterious. There's no explanation. There's actually no explanation at all for this that really holds water. There's all kinds of explanations have been proposed. So skeptics say, "Oh, it's just natural decomposition," but not true. It's not. There's also ideas that this is some kind of government experiment program. No, it's not. It doesn't fit. That doesn't fit at all. It's not being done by human hands, I would say. The reasons why, I don't know. There's theories that I'm not an expert on this. There's people like Linda Moulton Howe and David Caton and people like that who are the real experts. It's been covered very, very extensively on the Rich Planet show. There's some very, very good Rich Planet programs about it. However, people say, well, they're collecting DNA. Well, if you want DNA from someone, you don't have to pick them up, take them on a flying saucer and cut their eyes out and things like that. You could just take a hair from just a hair, a couple of cells is all. You just pluck a hair from their coat or something. That's all you need for DNA. So it's a good question. I mean, the injuries are all very similar. The jaw strip, genital removal, rectum removal, eyes removed, as I said, usually just one eye. And sometimes the blood is removed. Why, I just don't know. I mean, there's no explanation that really fits. Richard in Rich Planet, Richard E. Hall makes he says it may have something to do with prions and things. It may. So that's a kind of infectious agent, a chemical infectious agent. It may be. I just don't know. It's weird. Yeah, but it is real. It is real.
It's not like if you want, because they take parts of the mouth, don't they, and the genitals and the anuses and stuff like that, and you would think there's not like a shortage of cow anuses. I mean, the amount of cows that are slaughtered, you know, if they wanted some cow anuses for anything, if anybody wanted any, they could just do it. So it's obviously the cows. For me, the cows are either being tested. You know, the Black Ops testing military weapons. You know, laser style stuff. Or aliens or whatever you want to. It's something that we don't understand.
The thing is, if it is a test, if they're testing these animals and they're doing some kind of experiment, well, firstly, it's not very secret if they're snatching them from fields in the middle of the night and then leaving the bodies for the farmer to find. And also, what kind of medical test involves these kinds of procedures? That's the second question. I mean, if it is some secret government experiment, I mean, the governments do experiments on farm animals. It's true. I mean, you sort of brought this up just now, Jason. You sort of said really half of it already. If I was in government, I wanted to do an experiment and I needed farm animals, I could just go buy them from a farmer's market. It's cheaper and it's easier. Just go buy them from a farmer's market. Now, you see, it's rather why fly a helicopter out at night and pick them up?
You see, I was saying they were testing weapons, new weapons, so they were seeing how effective. Yeah. Say, if you've got some beam or something that with precision, I mean, and you wanted to test it in a field conditions, you've got a cow that's probably running away, and being able to target that's just the sort of thing I was talking about, rather than testing on on cows.
It's still something you could do far more easily in a secret military compound rather than in a field, in a farmer's field. If you really wanted to keep this secret, that's what you do. It's so that I do think they would simply buy them from the farmer's market and take them to wherever they wanted to do these experiments. I mean, they have done. They've done it in the past with other weapons. For example, if they want to test a new type of bullet or something, they'll very often just get hold of an animal through the usual channels and test it on a range, on a secret range. So that doesn't really make sense either. Now there's one proposition is there was something called Project Gas Buggy. Project Gas Buggy actually dates back, I think, to the 1950s and 60s. Now it seems unbelievable, but it's actually a very extreme form of fracking. They would actually detonate nuclear weapons underground to free up coal bed methane from shale beds and things like this, the way fracking does, but with a massive nuclear bomb. And the government wanted to test radiation levels in farms around the area. Now, this is, what's his name? Gabe Valdez suggests that. Now, he's a researcher into the animal mutilation phenomenon. The problem with Valdez's theory is if you want to test radiation levels in a public area, farmland, cities, parks, wherever it is, you could do it without these obtrusive kidnapping and mutilation methods they do for animals. It just doesn't quite make sense. He was asked, well, why do they just dump these bodies everywhere? And he said, oh, they're just having a laugh with us. They do it for fun. And I thought, they wouldn't do that. It doesn't quite make sense. It doesn't quite fit. So still waiting. I'm still interested in the phenomenon, but I wonder how we can find the solution.
Wakeup.net says, have crop circles ever shown up in weird and unexpected places like the South American jungles, or only ever in farmer fields?
No, they have shown up, for example, on private property with where access is actually prevented by security fences and things like that. They've also shown up in remote areas. Very often it's not actually in crop, because crop is by very definition a product of human inhabitation. Because it's farms. Wherever there's farms, there has to be humans. And whenever there's humans, there's always someone you can blame. Perhaps they did it with planks. However, they have occurred in, for example, on grasslands, in uninhabited areas. They've been seen on beaches, in sand. They've been seen in snow as well, in remote, cold areas. These are obviously not crop circles, but they're very similar phenomenon. The similar kinds of patterns appear. So the answer to that is yes.
Michael Snow says, is Richard D. Hall doing another speaking tour soon? I don't know who that's towards.
Well, I hope so. I mean, you'll have to ask him, but I hope so, because they're very good. They're well worth going along to. You not only get a very, very good presentation that he does, but you get to meet other people who are on a similar wavelength to yourself. So they're social events as well.
I've got something going off on my computer. It keeps going doo-doo-doo, doo-doo, and I don't know what it is. It's doing my head in.
I can't hear it. You look all right, and I can hear you, Jason. I can't hear you under noise.
Yeah, I can hear it either.
It's just weird. I don't know what it is. It's just something keeps going doo-doo-doo and on and off. But I can hear you as well. I can hear you. I didn't want to. Sorry. Did you have something to say, Taylor?
I just wanted to read another comment. Nonviolent extremist says something that I personally agree with as well, and that's that aliens are interdimensional, are actually are demonic, which is like fallen angels type of thing. It's more on a spiritual plane rather than a outer space type of physical plane.
It could be. I mean, in my view, possibly what we call aliens and UFOs are more than one phenomenon, which we have generically categorized as UFOs and aliens. But different UFO cases, different UFO events seem to generate different kinds of evidence. So some do appear to be physical. There's like a physical object, alien bodies. There's something which leaves marks on the ground. There's something which actually interacts with people physically. On the other hand, there are some which appear like balls of light that come out of holes in the sky and things like that. There's like a portal kind of thing opens and something comes out. There are aliens which are very, very benevolent. Mary Rodwell talks about the ones that seem to be very nice. There are a few, luckily a minority, that do appear to want to do us harm. And they do resemble something like see this here, don't mention the reptilians. Oops, it's gone. I've gone. Do you see that T-shirt I got there?
Yeah,
Some of them do look like that, and they do resemble some artistic representations of the devil and demons. And it could be there's a connection there,
yeah. Well, anything's possible. Anything is possible. Go on.
Sorry, Dean Yates says sounds like a loose USB connection, mate.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's this thing that I've got because this laptop didn't have a local area network port. I've bought an adapter into a USB 3, so it adapts into it, and I think it's that. So I'm going to I'll sort that out at some point. It's just so I can have it connected in. Because if not, even though the router's only about 6 feet away from me, it's still I sometimes have problems with it. But anyway, I just wanted to I didn't want to finish this show and do with this show. We are talking about your friend Kev Baker, who died at Christmas time, weren't it? Over Christmas.
It was just after New Year.
It was just one of those things, one of those coincidences, one of those synchronicities that seemed to happen to me. But only a couple of weeks before, I decided that I was going to call this the Jason Holmes Show because I thought, I was going through one of them stages. I was being a bit belligerent towards myself. I'm going to call it the Jason Holmes Show because all best shows have got a name, and like the Richie Allen Show and the Kev Baker Show, and it came so he obviously had an impression on me. I didn't really listen to him religiously. I know he was a friend of yours, so why don't you tell us about him? Because I'm sure there's a lot of his stuff that's still available that people will be able to go back and have a listen to.
Yeah, luckily, his archive is available. I mean, I don't know if TFR. I think what they plan to do with his shows, but I know that he had his own YouTube channel. His videos are still there. His channel's still there. He was an absolute workhorse. He did like every day. He'd be like broadcasting, and he had me on quite regularly. About once a month, I used to do a show with him, and we became good friends. I think he was a interesting guy. A very, very good guy. Very keen, very passionate about this subject indeed, about what he called serious woo, he called it. And he absolutely loved it. He dedicated his life to it. He left at a young age, and I was very, very sad. I was very sad to lose him. He died soon after I lost several other friends as well. And it was heartbreaking to have these bereavements so close to each other. It's changed my perspective on things, actually. I've kind of been mugged by reality a bit when it comes to death and the fact that, none of us are going to live forever. I'm going to lose more people. I'm of course, like everyone else, my time is going to be limited. And the world seems, without these people, the whole world seems different to me, because these are people, along with Gareth Davis of The Mindset, these were people I did shows with all the time. With Gareth, it was at least once a week. With Kev, it was at least once a month. And to have that taken away has been pretty awful, I think. So Kev is going to be sadly missed by many people. He really had an impact on this scene. He did a lot of good work. He was an honest, very, very dedicated, a very, very professional presenter, researcher. And wherever he is now, I hope he's well. And maybe we'll meet again in the future in another world. I hope so.
Yeah, well, you will do, no doubt at all. Yeah, but listen, I didn't know him, but I just wanted to allow you just to say something, about him.
Thanks, mate. Thank you.
It just and I would recommend, because when I did listen, Scottish guy, weren't he?
Mm.
Yeah. When I did listen, I can remember it because he had this Kev Baker show thing, and it was before I even started doing this. So he'd been around for a long time, hasn't he?
Oh, he came from Inverness originally. He lives in Glasgow, but he came from Inverness, and he from the youngest age he was exposed to the mystery of the Loch Ness monster, and he became fascinated by it. And living just down the road from the loch, he really got involved with it, and that really drove him to as he grew up. He got more and more involved in other things. UFOs, ghosts. He went ghost hunting, things like that. He went sky watching, and then he started his show. He did so much. He was really amazing. He was really, I think, the flagship show for TFR, and I know that they miss him as much as I do.
Yeah. Like a very young age as well. We were 50, were he 50?
45.
45. Yeah, so we weren't even 50. I know. I mean, I a lot of things. I feel like I'm invincible. But obviously we're not, are we? We're not invincible. Somebody asked how he passed. I mean,
I can tell you, he'd been ill for a couple of years. Actually, I mean, he put a brave face on it. He'd always post pictures of himself smiling in a hospital bed with an oxygen mask on his face. He kept posting these pictures, but he was in and out of hospital for about 2 or 3 years. And though I never actually feared for his life. So when he actually did pass, he actually came out of hospital on Christmas Eve, and so he spent Christmas with his family. Then on the 2nd of January, he was admitted to hospital and passed away.
Oh dear, far too soon, far too young. That 45, but he's obviously done what he needed to do here, what he was sent to do, and he's gone back to. He's gonna go on to his next one, wherever he is. We don't know, do we? That's the whole part of it. And as long as you embrace that and you realise that when it does happen, and when it happens to somebody close to you, I'm like you. I'm quite lucky. I feel like I've not lost anybody really close. Both my parents are still alive. And my sisters, everybody I know and I care about is still alive. I've only really lost grandparents, and not even close, not even friends. Touch wood, So. It is something that we all have to face. Terrible news.
Yeah.
What are you up to now, Ben? What? Go on. Sorry.
Well, I'm doing basically. I'm doing what I'm doing now. Really, I'm just carrying on with that. I believe that this feels like the right thing for me to do these interviews, like the one I'm doing now. To do my own show, to do my own productions. I'm working on fictional projects as well. I have like a serial I'm writing at the moment. I have books. If anyone wants to purchase a copy of my books. Now, if you like, I've written actually 5 novels, and I've written a number of short stories. The short stories are all for free, and so are the first 2 novels. But really, if you like this particular show, you probably like Roswell Rising, a novel of disclosure, which is my this book here, which I think is the one you're really going to like. It's £10, that is, if you want it. And there's 2 sequels, so it's a trilogy. But this covers all the kinds of things that Jason talks about on this show: the UFO, the conspiracy angle, the paranormal stuff like that. And it's not a thin book, so you get a good read out of that. And there's the 2 sequels, so it's £10 from all good bookshops now. Shameless plug.
Excellent. And your show, do you have a set show times, or do you just sort of when it takes your fancy, or you decide to do one?
Well, one of them, the HPANWO show, this is the main show of the HPANWO radio franchise, goes live every 8 p.m. every Thursday. And it's a podcast afterwards. So if you do miss it, you can always simply download the podcast and listen to it. It's completely free. But if you do tune in live, you could do what people are doing with Jason and Taylor here. You have a live chat box, and it's a great community. So do join us over there. radio.blogspot.co.uk.
Genuine. What, Taylor? Let's give you a last word. It's your birthday. Ask the last question for Ben Emlyn Jones for this evening's show. Go on, Taylor.
All right. Do you think that if it is true that aliens are actually spiritual beings and are linked to things like God and Lucifer, do you think that it's possible that that's one day, let's say the 2030 plan, which is exactly the 2000th year anniversary of the death of the reign of Jesus Christ? Do you think that it's possible that they could become widespread and openly reveal themselves to the world?
I think they will have to at some point. In fact, the way that they are being more open about it is an indication that they are feeling that pressure right now. They're being, as I said, they're being barefaced and very blatant, very blunt about their tyranny. The way they look, supposing that they are among us right now and they do look like this, they have like a form like that, which is their real form, and they're disguised as humans. That's how long can they keep going around pretending to be humans? At some point, will they show themselves to us? But if they do, they're going to have to make sure they have total control of society by that time. And this is maybe why they're rushing. Maybe they have to get it all done before 2030. I don't know. Maybe there is going to be some kind of second coming, apocalypse, whatever. But I do feel that there's a change in the. There seems to be some kind of spiritual change going on in this world that leads me to think that the rule which they've enjoyed for so long is coming to an end, and there is going to be some kind of final battle, whichever description you'd like to use for that.
Yeah, and is whatever's left, is that going to be worth winning? That's the problem, isn't it?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how it's going to go. There's no guarantees.
Yeah, so it's just like Billix says, it's just a ride, and just go along on it and try and enjoy it as much as you can. Just cling on to the good things and toss the bad stuff away, because it's not going to do you any good.
Just do the best you can with the time you've got. That's all you can do. Kev Baker didn't have as long as most people have in this certainly in this country, but he certainly put the 45 years he had to good use. He did more with those 45 years than some people do who live to be 100. So, which would you prefer to be? I'd rather be like him than the 100-year-old guy who just sat around watching TV.
Exactly, and it's not as if it's anything that where people try and justify drinking or partying and all that. It's it's somewhat decent, and it was clearly a good bloke. And if he did shows like this, I know how difficult they are. I came in with no experience, and I'm still crap. But I'm just doing it for love and for fun of it, and that's all you can do, really, isn't it? The love of it. That's what we do it for, not for the money or the fame. Because I wouldn't want any of that anyway. Not the fame, anyway.
I can't believe the skeptics who say this is some kind of money-making scam. Have you ever tried to organise a conspiracy conference, an exopolitics conference? I mean, do you realise that if I wanted money, I'd go and sell dodgy double glazing. I wouldn't be doing this.
No. I mean, we used to do meetings up here, but we never. We'd set them up and do them, but they'd always be free. We'd never make any money on it. The fact that we got the room for free and everything were a bonus, but once we had to pay, it had to stop. So nobody's doing it for money, because if you are, there's probably you and about 3 others that are really making a decent living on this side of alt media and stuff. So listen, Ben, it's been absolutely superb to have you on, as usual. Always great to have you on, and I'm not blowing smoke up your arse. There's only I very rarely have guests on it now, simply because I just, there's not really very many people I want to talk to. I've talked to many people, and there's not that many who I'd really want to talk to again. So it's always a pleasure to have you on, and one of my first picks when I think, right, they've had enough of me now, I'm going to have to get somebody on with me.
It's been great, but thanks very much, Jason, for having me back on the show. I think I don't know how many times I've been on the show, but it's always fun. It's always fun to talk to you. It's great to meet you, Taylor. Have a good day. Enjoy yourself and your birthday.
Thank you.
And for everyone who's watched, everyone who's watching, everyone who's posting chat, thank you very much as well. I recognise a few names there, and thanks for joining us over here.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I think Ben said just about everything. I'll see you again on Friday. Thanks, Taylor. I enjoyed the rest of your day.
Yep.
That's it. It's gone silent. Now he goes silent.
No, I'm here. I'm here.
Enjoy the rest of your day, Taylor. And thanks to everybody. I'll see you on Friday night, 9:30. Love ya.